I didn't even raise my voice. That's the part that surprises people when I tell this story. They imagine a dramatic showdown, screaming plates, flying some kind of Hollywood-style kitchen chaos. But no, I just stood there, quiet, calm, controlled. I was holding a wooden spoon, stirring a pot of beef and vegetable stew, something hearty for a rainy Sunday afternoon. The kind of meal that simmers all day and wraps a home in warmth. She stood in the doorway, my daughter-in-law, Chelsea, 29, fresh from yoga class, still in her overpriced leggings, and a top that looked more like a napkin than actual clothing. Her hair was pulled into a high ponytail, flawless makeup despite the rain. She wrinkled her nose the second she caught the scent of garlic and thyme in the air. "Are you cooking again?" she said, as if it were a personal offense. I smiled like I always did. "Just something simple. Thought I'd make enough for everyone." She walked over, peered into the pot, and then she laughed. A small, sharp laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "You really don't have to. I mean, it's kinda sweet, but let's be honest, this stuff tastes cheap." The word hit me like a slap. Cheap. She didn't say it casually. She said it with intention, like she wanted me to feel it. I mean, she added with a shrug, "It's not like James grew up on this. He's used to better now." James. My son. Her husband. The boy who once cried when I forgot to pack his lunch for a field trip. The one who used to lick the spoon clean after I made this very stew. I didn't say a word. I just turned the heat down to low and kept stirring. "I just ordered $500 worth of groceries," she said, checking her phone. "Organic. Imported. You know, real food." I nodded. She left the room. And that's when I did it. I turned off the stove, walked to the fridge, opened every drawer, every shelf. Bags still had receipts attached. She loved showing off the prices. I took them all. The French butter, the wild-caught salmon, the $12 bottle of oat milk, the box of dragon fruit she'd never actually eat. I carried them outside one armload at a time to the green garbage bin by the curb. The rain had stopped by then, and the air smelled clean new, fresh. I opened the lid and dropped it all in. Slowly, deliberately, the way she'd dropped that word cheap into my kitchen. Not out of anger, out of clarity, because sometimes silence is the loudest thing you can say. When I finished, I went back inside, washed my hands, and finished stirring the stew. 2 hours later, she screamed from the kitchen. "Where is all my food?" I looked up from my book. "Trash day is tomorrow." She blinked. "You threw it away. That was over $500 worth of groceries." I set my book down gently. "Yes. And it was worth every penny." That was the day I stopped pretending her words didn't hurt. That was the day I reminded her, and maybe even myself, that I wasn't invisible. That I had power too. The first time I met Chelsea, she complimented my shoes. "They're so vintage," she'd said, pausing just enough before the word to make me wonder if it was praise or pity. I laughed it off. I was raised to be gracious, especially to guests, especially to the woman your son thinks he loves. James was beaming, holding her hand like she was spun from gold. I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. I wanted to welcome her. So I smiled. That smile stayed in place for nearly 2 years. At the engagement party, I made her mother's favorite pecan pie recipe because I thought it would be a kind gesture. She didn't touch a slice. "Oh, I don't eat corn syrup," she said loudly, handing her plate to a passing waiter. The entire table heard. I laughed it off again. At their wedding, she asked me to wear beige, something neutral so it doesn't clash with the color palette. I ended up matching the tablecloths. Still, I told myself it wasn't personal. But something shifted after the wedding. It was subtle at first, like heat rising slowly under a pot. She started redoing dishes I had already cooked. If I made roast chicken, she'd order Thai takeout 2 hours later and tell James I just wanted to give you options. If I bought groceries, she'd roll her eyes and whisper to him, "Why does she buy the discount brand of everything?" James never corrected her, never defended me. Maybe he didn't notice. Or maybe he was just tired of being in the middle. Then came the birthday dinner. It was James's 32nd. I spent the whole day cooking his favorites, baked mac and cheese with the crusty edges, pan-fried pork chops, sweet tea in a glass pitcher, with lemon slices floating on top. Just like when he was 10, he barely touched it. Chelsea walked in with 2 brown paper bags from a gourmet vegan place and said, "I figured we could try something cleaner tonight." She set the bags down on the counter, moved my food aside and said, "Don't worry, we'll put your stuff in containers later." I stared at my son. He kissed her on the cheek. That night, I cried quietly in my room. Not because they didn't eat the food, but because I realized something far worse. I was becoming invisible in my own family. And I wasn't sure they'd notice if I disappeared entirely. But still, I smiled. I continued to cook, to clean, to stock the pantry and prepare tea when Chelsea's stomach was upset. She'd take it, drink it, and never say thank you. One afternoon, I heard her laughing on the phone in the living room. She still cooks like it's the 1980s. Boil and hope for the best. I was in the kitchen, hands covered in flour rolling dough for homemade biscuits. That day, something inside me cracked, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. I kept baking, kept smiling, because I needed to be sure. I needed to be certain that this wasn't just a bad week or a bad month, that this wasn't just my insecurity talking. And then came the comment, the one that finally lit the match. "It's kind of sweet," she'd said, "but let's be honest, this stuff tastes cheap." That wasn't just a critique of my food. That was a critique of me, of who I was, of what I gave, of what I meant to this family. And suddenly, all those years of silent disrespect had a voice. One word: cheap. That night, I lay in bed thinking of every meal I had ever cooked for James. Chicken noodle soup when he had the flu, scrambled eggs in a mug during finals week when he couldn't get out of bed, birthday pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. It wasn't about ingredients. It wasn't about money. It was about love. And if Chelsea couldn't see that, then maybe she didn't deserve to taste it. Chelsea didn't speak to me for 3 days after I threw away her groceries. Well, she did speak, just not to me. She made sure every slam of a cabinet, every exaggerated sigh, every tap on her phone happened loud enough for me to hear from the guest room. The fridge was suddenly locked with a digital keypad. I wasn't given the code. Passive aggression had become the language of the house. James tiptoed around us like a hostage caught between 2 stubborn generals. He'd ask if I wanted anything from the store, or mumble that Chelsea was just stressed from work. I'd nod and tell him not to worry, that I had enough tea and toast to get by. It was a lie, of course. I was eating the same boxed crackers and instant oatmeal every day, hiding them behind old holiday tins in the pantry, like I was smuggling dignity. The kitchen, my kitchen, had become enemy territory. The woman who once ran a small restaurant, who used to handwrite family recipes into Christmas cards for cousins, now had to wait until the house was empty just to boil eggs in peace. And yet, I stayed. Why? Because I was afraid to leave. Not because I didn't have options. I had a little savings enough for a small studio apartment. But I was terrified of what leaving would mean. That I'd be alone, forgotten, a mother reduced to holiday phone calls, and filtered photos of a future I wouldn't be part of. One evening, James invited some friends over for dinner. Chelsea made quinoa stuffed peppers and a mushroom tart. I offered to help out of habit more than hope. She looked at me over her shoulder. "You can light the candles." I took the matches and did as I was told. Later, I sat in the corner of the living room while everyone laughed about Netflix shows I didn't watch and restaurants I'd never afford. Someone complimented the tart. Chelsea smiled. "Thanks. It's organic, not like the sodium bombs we used to eat." Her eyes flicked toward me. I looked down at my lap. The tart, by the way, was dry, but I didn't say a word. That night, James knocked softly on my door. "You okay, Mom?" I nodded. "Of course." He lingered in the doorway. She's trying, in her own way." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "Do you even like quinoa?" He paused. Then, "Not really." I smiled. It was small, but it was something. But the silence didn't last. 3 days later, Chelsea stormed in from the garage, holding a paper grocery bag, one that I had brought in myself. "Did you buy this?" She held up a plastic container of chicken thighs and a bunch of cilantro. "Yes," I said. "You didn't even ask. It's food." She dropped the bag on the counter like it was contaminated. We agreed on a clean diet. No hormones, no budget meat. I crossed my arms. We didn't agree on anything. You decided, I just stopped fighting it. Her nostrils flared. You threw away my food. Now you think you get to fill this house with cheap garbage again? There it was. Cheap, like clockwork. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I walked to the trash bin, took the chicken out of the bag, and calmly placed it in the freezer. You can eat whatever you want, I said. But I'm done pretending my food is poison. If it bothers you, there's always DoorDash. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Then she left. Later that week, I noticed something strange. She didn't replace the groceries. She stopped cooking altogether. I found her one night sitting in front of the TV with a protein shake watching a food competition show. And then slowly, James started sneaking into the kitchen when she was asleep. At first, just toast, then sandwiches, then the stew. Yes, my stew. He didn't say much, just heated it up and ate silently at the counter. One night he whispered, "Tastes like home." That was all I needed. But peace was temporary. Chelsea wasn't done. She started locking cabinets, hiding ingredients, whispering into her phone late at night about boundaries and space. Then, one morning, I walked into the kitchen and found a sign taped to the fridge, shared meals only. No individual cooking without discussion. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I walked back to my room, grabbed my laptop, and opened Zillow. Enough was enough. The day I moved out, it rained again. Funny how the weather seems to echo life. Sometimes gray skies, wet roads, a kind of quiet that fills your bones. I packed lightly. Just the essentials, a suitcase of clothes, a box of family photos, my wedding ring, and a binder labeled Mom's Recipes. James was at work. Chelsea pretended to be asleep. I didn't expect a goodbye from either of them, and I didn't wait for one. The apartment I found was small, 2 rooms, and a kitchenette, but it had a window that caught the morning sun and a stove with real fire. I unpacked the recipes first, ran my fingers over each page like they were old friends. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. No padlocks on cabinets, no judgment over my seasoning choices, no signs on the fridge, just silence and freedom. The first week, I didn't tell anyone where I was, not even James. I figured if he wanted to find me, he would. But what I did do was cook. I cooked everything I hadn't had the heart to make in that house. The lemon chicken he used to love, coconut rice, the caramelized pork that always brought neighbors to their doors back in the old days. And one afternoon, while stirring a batch of tomato bisque, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a picture, just a bowl, a spoon, a sprig of parsley. I uploaded it to a Facebook group called Taste of Home and captioned it from a mama who was once called cheap. Here's to cooking with heart. I didn't expect much, but overnight the post exploded. Hundreds of comments, thousands of likes, people asking for the recipe, sharing their own stories. I was told my food was too ethnic. I stopped cooking for years. My son's wife called my kitchen a health hazard. This made me cry. I needed this. Thank you. That one post turned into a page. The page turned into a following. And within a month, I had a message from a woman named Linda. Hi, I help organize weekend pop-up kitchens in community spaces. Would you be interested in hosting one? We pay a small stipend, and you get to share your food. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I said yes. The first event was held at a community church. I made spring rolls, lemongrass soup, and banana fritters. We ran out of food in an hour. People came back the next week, and the week after that. Someone asked if I sold spice blends. Another offered to design a logo. A local news anchor reached out for an interview. I called the project Hearty Mama. A soft name, but strong. I still hadn't told James. Until the day he showed up at the church. I was prepping bowls of pho behind the table, wearing a red apron and wiping sweat from my forehead, when I looked up and there he was. He looked tired. Older somehow in just a few months. "Hey, Mom," he said. I froze, then smiled. "You found me." He nodded. "I've been following your page." Chelsea saw the interview on Channel 9. "Ah," I said. So she knows I'm not cheap, after all. He flinched. She was wrong, about so many things. I handed him a bowl. You hungry? He took it, sat down, and finished every drop. Then he looked up and said something I hadn't expected. Would you come back? I shook my head slowly. James, I love you, but I can't live in a house where I'm not respected. He looked down at his hands. She's not the same without you. The food isn't the same. That's the thing I said. It was never just the food. A week later, he came again, alone. He helped me clean up, wash dishes, stack chairs. When we finished, he sat on the floor beside me and pulled out something from his pocket. It was a laminated menu, my old restaurant's logo at the top. I found this in Dad's office, from your place. Lily's table. I never even knew you had a restaurant. I smiled. You were little. I sold it when your dad got sick. You were a chef, Mom. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you never asked, I said softly. That night, I walked him to the door. The sky had cleared. The streetlights flickered against the wet pavement. Chelsea wants to talk, he said. She doesn't know how to say sorry. I don't need an apology, I said. I just need peace. He nodded. Do you hate her? No, I said. But I don't want to shrink so she can feel tall. Thanksgiving came early that year, not on the calendar, on the soul. I was prepping for my weekly pop-up when James called again. His voice was softer this time, unsure. She wants to come, he said. I paused. To the event, no. To see you, to talk. I didn't answer right away. But something in me, maybe the part that raised him, the part that still remembered his childhood laugh, said, okay. So that Sunday, there she was. Chelsea, no makeup, no designer bag, no digital locks between us. Just a woman holding a pie she clearly didn't bake herself. I brought something, she said. I let her in. She didn't sit, just stood there in my small apartment, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure where to begin. Then I was wrong. I said nothing. I didn't know you were a chef. I didn't know you had a restaurant, or awards, or a following. I shrugged. That's not why I cook. She looked down at her hands. I thought I was building something new. I didn't realize I was tearing something down. Still, I said nothing. I thought you were just a mother who couldn't let go. That stung, but I took a breath. And then I said something I hadn't planned to say, Chelsea. I was never trying to compete with you. I was just trying to matter. She sat down then. The room fell quiet, and in that silence, I saw her soften. Not all the way, not overnight, but enough. I miss your cooking, she whispered. That's not what you miss, I said. But I'll take it. Weeks passed. We didn't become best friends. But the locks came off the fridge. The kitchen table was set again, with room for everyone. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a Hallmark movie. It looks like letting someone slice the carrots, even if they do it wrong. One evening, James stopped by alone. He brought his own groceries, simple ones. Chicken thighs, potatoes, rosemary. Teach me, he asked. I smiled. Always. And as we stood there side by side, chopping and seasoning in my little apartment kitchen, I realized something important. Maybe I'd never win Chelsea over completely. Maybe I wouldn't move back in. Maybe I didn't need to. Because I wasn't cooking for approval anymore. I was cooking for love. Mine. And that never was and never will be cheap. What would you do if someone disrespected the thing that makes you feel most alive? Have you ever been told your best wasn't good enough? Tell your story in the comments, and don't forget to share this if you believe every woman deserves to feel seen, not silenced.